The function f is defined by f of x equals 1 over 6x. What is the value of f of x when x equals 3? How would you do that? What would you do with the 3? Put the 3 where? Into x. So if f of x is 1 over 6x, and they're telling us to put a 3, that would be 1 over 6 times 3. So what answer would you pick? A, B, C, or D? D. 6 times 3 is 18. So that would be your answer. All right, so let's go to our notes. And let's go to page 19. So this is kind of carrying forward from what we've already talked about. But even degrees, the function ends in the same way. Arrows go in the same direction when it's even. And it's possible for you to have no real solution or 0 real solution. So it is possible to have an even function that does not cross or touch the x-axis. Let's put our phones away, please, so we can lock in. If both arrows are going up, it's positive. If both arrows go down, it's negative. Yeah, no, I don't have any. I think I threw it away because they were breaking. Any questions about even degrees? So it is possible to have an even degree function that has no real solution. Odd degrees end in opposite directions. But you have to have at least one real solution. So this side is going up. That means that this is positive. And on the right, this one is going down, which means that that's an example of a negative leading coefficient. Time today? I think I do. Okay, so we're going to write an equation in factor form. So in this example, the graph crosses the x-axis 3 times. So that means that it has to be at least a third degree. It crosses at -4. So we had a factor at +4. It crosses at -2, so we have a factor at +2, and it crossed at +1, so the factor would be -1. So just remember the factor is opposite of the graph. And then we also have to pay attention to what the right side is doing, because that's going to tell us if it's a positive graph or a negative graph. So let's go ahead and look at this example, question number 20. So is this even or odd? Even. Do you think this has a positive or a negative leading coefficient? Positive. Show me with your fingers how many times does it cross the x-axis? 2. So we have 2. Let me zoom in over here and here. So where did I put those 2 blue dots? -1 and +3. So I'm going to write that. My x-intercepts are at -1 and 3. So when I write my equation, I'm going to make 2 parentheses. And you have to flip the sign. So if my intercept is at -1, I'm going to put a +1. And if my second intercept is +3, I'm going to put a -3. And that is all that is to it. Any questions? Let's look at our next graph. Even or odd? Even. Positive or negative? Negative. How many x-intercepts? Show me with your fingers. 2 again. Just 2. Now this time, they don't go through, they bounce. So I have to square both of the factors. All right, so I put my 2 blue dots at -6 and +2. So that would be my 2 solutions. X equals -6 and 2. So y equals, make your 2 parentheses. Flip the sign. And because they bounce, both of these factors have to be squared. That was the problem with one of the questions we had on our skills check. That one equation was worth 5 points. A lot of people forgot to square the factor. And because this is negative, anytime it's negative, you have to put a -1 in the front. And this is only when it's a negative LC. That's the only time you have to put a -1 first. So if it's negative, we have to put a -1 first. So this is an example of a 5-point question. You would get a point for the -1, a point for each factor, and a point for each exponent. All right, what about this one, even or odd? Odd. This arrow is going down. The right side tells you if it's positive or negative, so this is a negative graph. We have 2 x-intercepts. Let me go ahead and zoom in. One is at -2, and one is at +3. So let's make our equation. We have 2 parentheses. And we're going to flip the sign. So instead of a -2, I'm going to put a +2. And instead of a +3, I'm going to put a -3. Now, one of these is a bounce. Which one does it bounce? Does it bounce at -2 or does it bounce at +3? Bounce. Yeah, it's a -2. So if you look at -2, notice that the graph kind of just sits on top of -2. It doesn't go through -2. It's just sitting on top. So that means that that factor has to be squared. So we're going to square this one. Only that one. And because this is negative, you have to put a -1 first. And that would be the equation I will be looking for on your test Friday. All right, so this is our last page, I believe. Is this the last page? Is it? Is it the last page? Okay, good. All right, so I want you to see if you can match the equation. Take a moment. So we got to figure out which one of these equations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, goes with this graph. Which equation would go with the second graph and which equation would go with the third graph. So what I want you to do, before you look over here, is write the equation for A, B, and C. And then match it. So take a minute, write your equation for graph A, B, and C. A is a little tricky. Start with B and C. Let's do B and C first. Because I don't see the equation for A up there. Oh, I see it. I see it. It's kind of tricky. So we'll go over A together. So do B and do C. Write your equation for B and write your equation for C. All right, which letter would you choose? What number equation would you choose for graph B? Show me with your fingers. I see some 2s and I see some 5s. All right, so let's look at question B. So we know that we have 3 x-intercepts. And it goes through a -4, so that would be a +4. -2, so that's a +2. +4, so that's a -4. This is also a negative graph, so we need a negative in the front. So that would be graph number 5. So I would agree. If you pick number 5, that's what I would choose too. For graph C, show me with your fingers. Which one did you use for graph C? All right, I see everybody saying 2, so let's look at 2. So we know it crosses twice, here and here, so we need 2 parentheses. Crosses at -6, so we need an equation with a +6. It crosses, or it bounces at +1, so we need a -1, and that needs to be squared. So does that match number 2? It does. All right, what would be your guess for A? It took me a minute. See, that's why I was saying A, that was tricky. It's not that one. It's not 6. It's actually, and I think I saw somebody, wait, let me see one more time. Which one would you pick? It would be 3. And the reason why it's 3, do you see how right here, how it comes down, but it doesn't come down far enough? And we talked about that yesterday. What does that mean? That means that you have two roots that are what? Begins with an I. Imaginary. So I have 2 imaginary. When it doesn't come down quite far enough, but it's like, you know, like that's an example, that's an imaginary. So the only option that gives us an I is 3. So do you see how in 3 is the only one that puts an I? That was tricky because it almost got me too. I was like, they didn't put an equation for number 1, for A, but they did. So that would be number 3. All right. So use this class time to finish homework 5. I am giving extra credit if it's turned in today. And then start working on your study guides.